Kia tō te rangamari e roto e tine whare o tatou e tine wā.
I'm travelling, so I don't know. I'll get...
I think I'll have to...
Oh, hi. Yeah, can I have 2 kgs of pears, please, mixed?
Certainly. What would you like?
Whatever you got, whatever. Yeah, just mixed. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I had some of those last week. Yeah, they're really good. Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, can you put some of those in the Taylor's Gold? Yeah.
It's $7, please.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you very much.
That's brilliant. Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, cheers, thanks. And you, bye. Kia ora, my name's Ian, and I'm going to talk to you today about how we cater for diversity in our classrooms. Diversity is described by either the word different or varied. If we use the word different to define diversity, it raises the question, different from what or whom? If something is different, does that imply that there's a norm we can use to measure the difference? If there is a norm, what is it, and who decides on what the norm is? If I'm different from you, how am I different? If I'm different from you, will everyone see that difference in the same way? As soon as we use the word difference, the understanding of the word diversity becomes complicated. So perhaps we should look at the word varied to describe the word diversity. If we focus on the word varied or variety within the context of a classroom, then what is the variety a teacher is presented with? A group of students in a classroom are characterised by their variety. They are heterogeneous or composed of unrelated parts. The students are not the same. They will bring a varied range of experience to all learning situations, and this experience will change as the learning context changes. The challenge teachers face is to cater for the needs of their students, who vary in ethnicity, socio-economic status, special educational needs, language backgrounds, gender, or other differences. To meet this challenge, we need to develop an understanding of all the component parts present in our classrooms. We know there will be a range of ability and understanding in our classroom. We also know there will be a variety of cultures and ethnicity in our classrooms. Well, how will our knowledge of a student's ethnicity, culture, ability and understanding inform our teaching? I'm going to present a perspective of culture which I hope will help us understand its complexity, and I'm going to start by looking at the way an artist has explored identity and culture. This is the artist Yinka Shonibar. His work explores the issues of colonialism along those of race and class. He examines in particular the construct of identity and a tangled interrelationship between Africa and Europe. In this artwork, the ship has 37 large sails made of richly patterned textiles which we commonly associate with traditional African dress and symbolic of African identity and independence. But the history of the fabric reveals that they were inspired by Indonesian batik design when parts of Indonesia were part of a Dutch colony. The fabric was mass-produced by the Dutch and sold to the colonies in West Africa. The fabric we associate with traditional African costume is in fact a traditional Balinese design appropriated by the Dutch colonists and used to create trade between West Africa and the Netherlands. So culture is therefore a construct, and it will depend on the lens through which we view it. If you place yourself within a cultural framework, what framework do you identify with? Are you aware of all the aspects of your framework? And why do you react to different cultures in different ways? and what has influenced your reaction to certain cultures. We live in a country of about 4.5 million people in the southwest corner of the Pacific, and we're surrounded by the sea. And it's across this sea that the inhabitants of this country have travelled to get here. For over 700 years, people have travelled to these islands and brought with them their cultures. Migration to this country continues, and mirroring the development of transportation, this has grown. We now have cultural groups from around the world settled in New Zealand. So how do we know what cultures live in New Zealand? Well, one source of information could be the New Zealand census. These statistics are based on data collected during the 2013 census. Each one of these figures describes some of the key characteristics of some of New Zealand's major ethnic groups in 2013. These statistics can give us some information, but it's very general. For example, in 2013, almost 1 in 4 people living in Auckland, in the Auckland region, identified with one or more Asian ethnic group, compared to 1 in 5 in 2006. So this data tells us the number of Asians living in Auckland is increasing. But what does the term Asian mean? It is also a broad term which doesn't really describe a person's cultural background. The data that describes the population of Auckland divides the category of Asian into the following list. But what can we tell from this list? Well, for example, the Filipino population more than tripled in size since 2001. Or that other Asian ethnic groups with large percentage increases between 2001 and 2013 were Vietnamese, Korean, Japanese. But within each country, there will be a number of ethnic groups. For example, the Chinese government recognises 53 ethnic minority groups. So then when we look at this table, each country we see will contain a number of different ethnic groups, each with their own cultural traditions. What would be a common concern of any ethnic group newly arrived in New Zealand? The New Zealand Families Commission gathered data that looked at the concerns and hopes of new families arrived here. If you were newly arrived here, what would be your concerns about your own culture? What would be the concerns of any ethnic group in New Zealand? And what would their expectations be of their local school? Whatever culture we associate ourselves with, that culture is who we are. So to deny someone of their culture, or to ignore it, would be to deny who that person was. If schools are to engage effectively with students from diverse cultural and linguistic backgrounds, teachers need to work more effectively with their schools' families and communities to improve student motivation, progress and achievement. But what does effective engagement look like? And what does the research and literature tell us about engaging with families from diverse cultural and linguistic backgrounds? According to Robinson, it would be parents and teachers involved together in children's learning, and teachers making connections to student lives, and families and community knowledge being incorporated into the curriculum and teaching practices. According to Biddulph, schools should treat families with dignities, and they should build strong aspirations, and they should provide structured and specific suggestions rather than general advice, or they should provide group opportunities as well as one-to-one contact, and they should be empowering and fostering autonomy and self-reliance with families. What can we do in our practice to effectively engage culturally diverse communities? When we look at early childhood centres in schools and their classrooms, do they elaborate the cultural diversity of the students? Does the School and Early Childhood Centre reflect the cultural diversity of the community, or does it just reflect one culture? This mural is painted on the side of a classroom at one of my local schools. In a community centre next door to the school, the centre's manager wanted to organise the painting of a mural to celebrate Matariki. The community centre manager used a local community artist to work with local secondary, intermediate and primary aged Māori students to design and paint the mural. Using Matariki as the central theme, the students used their own knowledge of Matariki and local Māori history to develop the design. The design was a collaboration between all the students, and its range of visual metaphors not only illustrates Matariki, but also references the local landscape and traditions. The mural was painted on the outside wall of the primary school's classroom next to a public footpath, so that it could be seen by members of the public as well. Since its completion, the mural is used by the whole school to teach a variety of curriculum areas. This project enabled the students to express their own knowledge and celebrate their culture, and share that knowledge with both the school and the wider community. So how does this description of the Matariki Mural project cater for the diverse needs of the school and its community within the context of the advice given by the literature? If we look at Robinson within the context of this project, the school definitely made a connection to the students' lives, and family and community knowledge was incorporated into the curriculum and teaching. The mural was completed just before the local community celebrated Matariki, and the mural went on to become the central focus to bring both teachers and families together. It is not just a range of culture and ethnicities schools have to cater for. There will also be a range of students whose physical and intellectual needs need to be catered for. If we view inclusion through the opposite lens, it would be called exclusion. Who would make the decision to exclude someone? And if they did, what would be the criteria to be excluded? Perhaps we could exclude according to the hat someone wears, or perhaps we could exclude them according to the way they sing. If you don't cater for the needs of all students in your classroom, you are effectively excluding them. So what is inclusion, and what should inclusion look like? If we look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, of which New Zealand is a signatory, we can unpick what inclusion looks like. Article 26 states that everyone has the right to education, and that education should promote understanding and tolerance amongst all people. And it also states that parents have a right to choose the kind of education that shall be given to their children. So what do the curriculum documents tell us? Te Whāriki, the early childhood curriculum, supports the cultural identity of all children, affirms and celebrates cultural differences, and aims to help children gain a positive awareness of their own and other cultures. The New Zealand curriculum, when talking about inclusion, states that the curriculum is non-sexist, non-racist and non-discriminatory. It ensures that students' identities, languages, abilities and talents are recognised and affirmed, and that their learning needs are addressed. I want to use the words of those in schools to address the question of inclusion. On the PowerPoint associated with this film are links to 2 films which demonstrate how diversity is catered for in schools. If we want to live in a society that's inclusive, our schools should be a model of that inclusiveness.